Hello, viewer. Just reminding you that if you have a question, comment, or submission for me or any of my characters, you can send it to chronicler177@gmail.com or post it in the fan mail channel of my Discord to have it answered in my fan mail series. And if you have the time, please leave a comment on this video to let me know what you thought of it. Your feedback is very important to me. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hyborean, my latest and greatest, and oh my god, was it so much harder to make than anything else I've done. Production took so long, I've probably forgotten more about it than what I'm going to talk about in this video, but I'll try anyway. I don't think I've felt this much stress about completing a project since Odd Man Out Season 2. But for completely different reasons. With Odd Man Out, I was trying to create and release 20 smaller episodes while attempting to keep it to an upload schedule that was happening while I was uploading completed episodes simultaneously, doing all the body acting myself, and working full-time. With Hyborean, I was making only 5 longer parts, aimed at releasing once they were all finished, and I had a lot of help body acting, and I'm working part-time, but I put more work into these 5 parts than I put into Brotherhood War and Aftermath combined. I think their total runtime is greater than Brotherhood War and Aftermath combined as well, give or take. It wasn't a total nightmare, but getting it out for the summer 2022 release was one of the most harrowing things I've ever done for this channel. Let's dive into why that was the case. So, I'd originally planned for Hyborean to release in December of 2021, but as production progressed, it became very clear that this wasn't going to happen. Writing started during Aftermath's release and was finished in early 2021. I started forging new sets in January of 2021. Although I had brought on Wolf to make Phoenix Nest and a few other maps, the vast majority of sets were still handled by me at that time. I used lessons I'd learned from Brotherhood War to make higher quality sets, but this slowed down set building quite a bit, and the amount of sets I required was higher than Brotherhood War. Forging wrapped in June, half a year later. Forging by itself set me back months in production. And then there was body acting. Since Brotherhood War, I'd become much more anal about body acting, requiring more and more takes of certain scenes if they weren't close enough to what I wanted. I think this overall resulted in a greater quality of scenes overall, but it also dragged out body acting significantly. This isn't even mentioning the increased script length and complexity of scenes. Brotherhood War's first part only took 3 weeks or so to act and film, when part 1 of Hyborean took 8 weeks. I knew without a doubt that I was looking at a 2022 release right there. Part 2 took 8 weeks, Part 3 took a merciful 4, Part 4 took 7, and Part 5 took 20 weeks to complete shooting. We'd started body acting in the first week of June 2022, and on April 13th of 2022, after a record-setting 5-hour session, my exhausted, fatigued crew and I wrapped shooting on Hyborean. The body actors seriously pulled their weight this time. The amount of actors consistently showing up for sessions, as well as staying for longer, has never been higher. There were some particularly great moments they did on their own, like when this Warthog gunner here gets killed, which wasn't supposed to happen, and Logan switches to the turret and saves the scene, or when Zane, who is playing Zack at this time, I believe, goes to run on the bridge and almost falls down but picks himself up and start running, making the scene even cooler. I owe so much to these guys. If you haven't seen the Meet the Body Actors video from Brotherhood War, you really should go check it out. This is the first project that I began filming out of order. Our first sessions consisted of scenes from the ending of Part 5, like the afterlife scene, Zack getting shot, stuff like that. This was done to prevent most actors from getting spoiled on these critical scenes. They were shot only with actors who didn't mind potential spoilers, and I shooting them way ahead of time, kind of ensured that those who were in those scenes kind of forgot about it by the time shooting wrapped up. That being said, I still kind of lied to the cast about what we were filming sometimes, like saying that the afterlife sequence was a dream, and Zach getting shot was an alternate universe. After seeing these scenes for real, I don't think some actors will trust what I say again. The price we directors pay, I guess. Hyborean was also the first project that I'd done extensive rewrites and reshoots on. The final battle in Seattle went 2 or 3 rewrites before I was finally happy with the flow. While filming or editing certain scenes, some of them just didn't feel right to me. Past me usually let that stuff slide, but this time I started going the extra mile to bump up the quality even further. These reshoots added more time to production, but I think they were totally worth it. Some of the reshoots were simpler. There were a couple of times, there were a couple of action scenes I redid simply because I thought they were too messy or unsatisfying the first time around. The biggest one of these was the second half of the Phoenix Run segment in the opening of Part 1. In the original version, the momentum sort of stopped after Zach smashed through the wall, and I didn't like that Zach and Denver were just out in the open getting shot at and not getting killed, so I rewrote and reshot the sequence to have much more moving action to keep up that adrenaline rush, and was still able to use the same ending sequence to it, so it was pretty efficient, didn't take long. When the Lifebringer shoots Zach in Part 5, originally she was going to take Silva's pistol and shoot him with that, but the death animation sucked. We shot it like a dozen times before Golden Samurai suggested using the bullshot instead, and that worked a lot better. Zach and Denver's conflict was originally resolved in Part 2, using some of the same dialogue we see in Part 4. While editing, I realized this was way too soon to end that thread, so I moved it to after Logan's death and extended the scene to bring in Zach's breakdown before they make up with each other. I think it was a lot more impactful that way. Other scenes were entirely rewritten, rearranged, reshot, and revoiced, some multiple times. The most prominent of these revolved around Galloway. The original draft had him giving this big backstory in Part 3 about how he was an Oni staff member and the Lifebringer had offered him to join her and blah blah blah, and then in Part 4 he runs away and hides when the cure gets used and shows up later after everyone but Logan and Garrett have left the room, and then has this big prolonged fight with them ending in Galloway killing Logan and Garrett killing Galloway. All of this was fully voiced and shot. I never felt quite right about having that big info dump right in the middle of the movie, and while editing Part 3, I decided I couldn't do it, so I cut down his dialogue significantly, removing the flashback and leaving his backstory sort of implied. I felt like this worked a lot better, but then I chose to rewrite and reshoot the fight scene right before I started editing it. I decided that having him just hiding and nobody noticing he was gone until he comes back was really fucking stupid. So I moved the reveal that he isn't mind-controlled until right up before he dies, and adjusted the script so he preys on Phoenix Team's ignorance and plays like he's freed right until he realizes Logan has figured him out. This is my favorite rewrite. I love the bomb drop moment that happens when you realize Galloway is still the enemy. The new scenes are much smoother, much less clunky, and work a lot better. It also allows Logan's death to be much more of a shock because it's so sudden, and allows the fight scene to be focused on Garrett and Galloway, which was the whole point of it anyway. The original fight scene was a lot more action-packed and acrobatic, but the new one is a lot more tension, and honestly, I think that works better. Poor Master Lyons had to revoice these sequences 3 times, and me and Hugh had to throw in some extra lines as well. Still totally worth it. The reception to that scene was fucking awesome. Everybody liked it, so absolutely worth it. I'm going to make a video with several deleted scenes in it if you want to learn about more of what was cut, so I recommend checking it out when it releases. Reshoots weren't the only thing that I ventured out of my comfort zone for. Near the end of filming on Part 4, Night Avenger joined the Forge team. He agreed to recreate many of the sets for Part 5 to make the last sets of Hyborean the best ones of all. He got to work on them right as we wrapped Part 4 and jumped into Part 5. It was an almost competitive race. He would deliver maps sometimes the day before we needed them to shoot on, and filming took just enough time for him to finish the next set of maps, but god damn it, he delivered such amazing work at such short notice, and it barely impacted production time. He also redressed Spartan Command, turning it from the frankly embarrassing model I used in Brotherhood War to the imposing citadel it is now. Originally, I was just going to use a slightly modified version of the one that I used in Aftermath, and we already reshot a whole bunch of scenes on it. When Knight came in, he said, hey, I really want to redo Spartan Command, will you let me? And I was like, oh, I don't want to, we already shot a bunch of scenes on it, it'll take time to redo, and then I just really thought about it and was like, you know what? These scenes are not going to be hard to redo, and this, frankly, the Spartan Command building looks like shit. So I let him redo it, and we got that, which is probably my favorite set in all of Hyborean. It's so fucking cool. I'm really, really glad he pushed me on that. He even taught me a thing or two, like how to remove that weird green sheen from the nighttime title canvas. The trick involves placing a black box at a certain coordinate point, and somehow that affects the light map and removes the green. I don't fully understand it myself, but I do know it works. The first time I did it, though, I didn't realize you had to color the box black, and I left it on the default block color, and that turned everything yellow. Whoops. You can see more about the set work Night Avenger and Wolf did in the Meet the Artist video. Hyborean's overall production lasted from the end of 2020 to the middle of 2022. By the end of it, I was absolutely sick of it and feeling a lot of stress to have it completed. For a while, I wasn't sure I'd hit the summer 2022 release, but I didn't want to keep people waiting anymore, and I was tired of feeling so crushed by production, so I pushed through it and managed to achieve the July 2022 release date. After that, it was like a wave of relief washed over me. Don't get me wrong, while I still feel like there's a few small problems with Hyborean, I'm really happy with the end result. And I'm really glad that everybody liked it too. The reception, especially to Part 5, was a resounding success. So, very, very happy with that. But I don't think I can weather a production like that again, at least not for a long time. Going forward into Odd Man Out Season 3, I'll be somewhat restructuring my production cycle a bit to reduce stress on myself and the crew, as well as hopefully shorten the amount of time fans have to wait between releases. In Brotherhood War, our main characters had the upper hand right up until the end. They had the power, they had the numbers, the technology, they were up against an inferior enemy, they were in charge of the battlefields. Hyborean flips the script on this. I wanted our heroes to never be able to feel safe, at least not for long periods of time. Phoenix Nest gets attacked right off the bat, gunships pursue them everywhere. Anytime they reach an objective, the Lifebringer's forces are right behind them. Even when they strike back, she owns the turf and battles them on all fronts. It's the Lifebringer's planet now. I was really looking forward to make the environments for this one. I wanted each episode to have its own unique environmental identity. For example, Part 1 largely takes place in the ruins of Olympia, showcasing the damage the Lifebringer's done to Earth's cities and anyone that has resisted her. The canals the Warthog chase happens in are obviously inspired by the Water Hazard chapter of Half-Life 2, so much that I was literally referencing pictures from Water Hazard while building the sets. Also, I finally got the Warthog chase I've been waiting forever to do. Yay! Honestly, I think it was one of the best parts of the entire machinima. I really enjoyed making it and how it turned out. Part 2 sees Phoenix team trek across the Pacific Northwestern wilderness and into the abandoned town of Wenatchee, which I've been pronouncing it Wenatchee the whole time, and I was literally just informed by someone who lives near there, literally last night, that it's pronounced Wenatchee, so my bad. I pulled a lot of inspiration from Half-Life 2 Episode 2 for this one, with gunships patrolling the skies, blasting the Lifebringer's orders, and visiting lonely buildings and overgrown train yards. Phoenix Nest, aka the Batcave as Wolf and I called it, also turned out really good. You can see that it's very low-tech, rundown, but still serves as a decent home to the folks who need it. I based the idea of it off of Crow's Nest from Halo 3. The three parts, the command center, the barracks, and the garage, all have their own feel to them, and yet are still clearly part of the same base. For what was the most frequently featured location in Hyborean, I couldn't have asked for a better set. Part 3 sees a return to Forerunner environments, which I'd also really been looking forward to doing those. I love Forerunner environments, I think they're really cool. There's 2 unique biomes in this part, the Polar region and the Crags. The Polar region was really nice. I've always thought Forerunner architecture and icy, snowy regions go well together. You know, like Assault on the Control Room in Combat Evolved. I also added these weird-looking plants that they're parasitic. So they can't normally grow in the frigid environment, but they find purchase on Forerunner structures, siphoning off their energy. The Crags were my favorite of the 2, though. I wanted to make a rocky desert environment that was distinct from the grasslands of Brotherhood War Part 4, so I went with a sort of a Badlands-inspired look. Unlike the glass deserts, there is sparse plant life. Tough grass grows in the ground, harsh alien plants and vines manage to eke out an existence here. The rock formations are alien as well, with sharp dagger-like spires sticking out of the ground at odd angles. And of course, Forerunner architecture litters the landscape. All of this really separates it from your more Earth-like environments and lets you know that yes, you are still on an alien world. Part 4 showcases the beach and the Vault of Lights. The beach sequence is an obvious reference to the Silent Cartographer opening from Halo Combat Evolved, as well as the opening of Long Night of Solace from Reach. It is also a reference to the Reach trilogy. The music here was a callback to the Phoenix team of the Reach trilogy. One last hurrah for them, you know, before Logan dies. The Vault of Lights was also really cool. It was interesting to be able to make this huge Forerunner structure all underwater, and I got to use Forge teams I'd never used before. I took a lot of inspiration from the underwater sections from Halo 2. I actually went back and played that level a few times to kind of get the feel for it. The only thing I didn't get to do that I wanted to do was to have Phoenix team visit an abandoned Reformist base. You know, because there were lots of Reformist bases built on Cradle during Lifebringer, and they would be abandoned by now, many years abandoned. You know, they'd still be there after all, but I didn't really have a place in the script to work one in, unfortunately. The entirety of Part 5 takes place in Seattle, but I made sure to have varied locations even inside the city and switch between them often to keep the action from getting stale. There's the utilitarian industrial sector, the oppressive military sector, the old town-style residential sector, or the old city, that has some of the Forerunner architecture cutting in, and then the inner city, which is being completely overtaken by the growing Forerunner structures. This last one was probably my favorite. I thought it was very interesting and kind of scary seeing all this alien architecture invading the place we saw so much of in Brotherhood War. Really solidified the Lifebringer's takeover. I took inspiration, actually, from somewhere you might not guess, Silithus in World of Warcraft, with those weird, big, towering insect hives taking over the desert. A bit of a weird location to draw inspiration from, but that's kind of what I wanted to go for. These really odd alien growths, almost, taking over the environment. And obviously a lot of inspiration from the Combine walls, well, at least with the old city, the Combine walls eating into the older style of human architecture. And of course, all these locations were made so much better by Night Avenger coming in and rebuilding them. We really sent out Hyborean with a bang. Very, very proud of it, very happy. Hyborean's environments weren't the only thing that a lot of effort went into. A whole shit ton of lore went into the characters and enemies. Phoenix team having specialized, unique weapons was really cool to do. I thought about what each member would want. Logan falling back on older hardware he's more familiar with made sense, just like Guardian giving his shotgun a Forerunner augmentation. Denver's bayonet would help her fight the Spartans who are stronger than her. Zach's holoscope is representative of his renewed bond with Garrett, since it's based on Reformist tech, and his silenced pistol is a callback to his more stealthy days. The Spartans carried over all their armor sets from Brotherhood War and Aftermath, but I got to give them the Forerunner augmented weapons to solidify the Lifebringer's control over them. The Hyboreans themselves got a lot more screen time too. I even got to bring back the Poltergeists, but I guess I didn't learn enough from my first time using them. You see, in Lifebringer I talked about how they ended up being really hard to film due to their chaotic movements and had to cut a few scenes with them. Well, I brought them back and had the exact same problems as before. I originally had 2 scenes with them, but The one that ended up in part 3 and one that was going to be in the Vault of Lights, but that second one looked really bad, so I cut it. Even the one in the Ice Canyon was messier than I'd like. I clearly didn't prepare properly for them, so that one's on me. However, I do believe I did a very good job with the Centurions. Their voices all sound really fucking cool. Kudos to Tatsumari and the effects both of us layered on them. I also got to invent the Centurion heavies, which I think are fucking awesome. My only regret with them is not having enough heavies in it. By the way, if you want to learn more about all this, check out the Hyborean Ultimate Guide when it releases. It goes into all of this stuff in great detail. I think you'd really enjoy the read. I have been dealing with the god-awful dogshit program that is Adobe Premiere Pro since 2013. It's slow, it freezes a lot, it crashes a lot, it isn't that powerful for editing, I feel like, and the subscription is too much per month for what it's worth. But it allowed me to do a lot more than my previous program, iMovie, did, so I put up with it. Until now. Premiere single-handedly caused a major fracture in Hyborean's production. Really late in the editing process, while I was working on Part 5, it developed what I call the 3446 glitch. While reviewing any footage in any sequence, at precisely 34 minutes and 46 seconds, the entire program locks up, requiring a reboot. Not a second before, not a second after, exactly at 34 minutes and 46 seconds. I could view footage before and after 3446, but if the scrubber passed over 3446, it was all over. When it first happened, I thought it was an error with the sequence, no big deal, so I closed it and reopened it. Then it happened again, so I closed and reopened Premiere. Usually that works. It didn't this time. Neither did the following: changing the footage source, making a new sequence, making a new project, clearing my cache, rebooting my computer, completely uninstalling and reinstalling the program. When a fresh install didn't fix it, I was launched into the single greatest night of panic I ever experienced in Hyborean. You see, it didn't really matter that I couldn't view the footage at the 3446 mark. No, that was easy enough to work around. The problem was that if I had a project with footage in or after the 3446 mark, the export process would fail. I could not finalize parts 2, 4, and 5 because each of them was more than 34 minutes and 45 seconds long. I really didn't want to split them up either because the stories were not meant to be cut in half, and I felt that would hurt the viewing experience. I really didn't want to do it. After a good deal of fretting, I found a solution with Night Adventure's help. I exported parts 2 and 4 into halves and part 3 into thirds, and stitched the fully edited parts together using a free editing kit called DaVinci Resolve. I found DaVinci confusing to navigate, but it was enough to turn 2 or 3 parts into one video. Hyborean was saved, but I was absolutely fucking livid at Adobe. I decided that night that I would not use Adobe past Hyborean. My pal Green Hygiene at Last Second Films has had nothing but good things to say about Final Cut Pro, and it's purpose-built for Macs, and it doesn't have a subscription fee. I'm a bit worried because it'll likely take me a good long while to get comfortable with a new kit, but I have plenty of opportunities to practice with things like Gamer Boys, the Fallout Home videos, the next Pokemon tournament, and Odd Man Out should be a much less complicated production than Hyborean, so I should be okay. TLDR, fuck Adobe, I'm moving to Final Cut. Going into Brotherhood War, I had prepared for the onslaught of issues Halo 5 was going to throw at me, and did a pretty good job at dealing with them. I was able to learn from the folks who had pioneered Halo 5 machinimas a lot, and then I learned a lot from making the production itself, and I found even more fixes and workarounds while making Aftermath. I thought I'd conquered everything the game could throw at me, so that was, of course, exactly when Halo 5 sent a few more curveballs my way. We were halfway through shooting part 1 when I found a new bug. I couldn't fucking believe my eyes, guys. Sometimes in theater, Warthog turrets randomly disappear after rewinding or fast-forwarding. I have no clue what causes this. Sometimes you can restart the film and they come back only to disappear again later, and of course, Hyborean features a lot more Warthogs than Brotherhood War. This almost butchered the Warthog chase in part 1, and definitely ruined a lot of shots with the Warthogs in part 5. Luckily, I was able to salvage most of the chase sequence, and I think it turned out to be the highlight of that part. Part 5 stuff was another story. I had to severely limit the footage and camera angles I used because the bug was so fucking prominent there. If you really look at the footage, there's even some parts where it made it in. Really fucking frustrating. I didn't find any way to fix it except to get lucky. The fast forward bug came back in strength. You know the one when you fast forward in theater, but it doesn't speed up the footage, it just plays out at normal speed with jank animations. In Brotherhood War, this only happened on a few sets, but in Hyborean, it was every single set. Except for, curiously enough, most of the ones Night Avenger made. I don't know what the distinction is there. I don't know if it's something with me, something with him, something about the way he does maps. I don't fucking know. So for the majority of Hyborean, I couldn't rely on fast forward at all. After rewinding, I'd have to sit there with my thumb up my ass, waiting for the footage to play out at normal speed until I reached the part that I needed. Also, that one bug that causes forge items to delete themselves upon skipping forward came back, but only once with the train yard map. When I saw that it happened, we went and reshot it in machinima mode, and that worked out just fine. And I'm really fortunate that it only happened that one time, but I still don't know what the hell causes it. There's a bug with the mantises that I noticed back in Brotherhood War, but there were a lot more mantises in Hyborean, so I dealt with it a lot more this time. In theater, if you rewind, a mantis's legs will reset position to default facing. If they move, the legs swivel in the direction of movement, but I had so many scenes with stationary mantises that it really became trouble. With fast forward being broken again, I repeatedly had to rewind way back until the mantis hadn't reached the spot it was in, wait for it to take its place, and then get as many shots as I could until I had to repeat the process all over again. This was so time-consuming that sometimes I just said, fuck it, and shot the mantis when its legs are crooked, doing my best to keep the legs out of frame. If you really pay attention, you can see this once or twice in the final product, but nobody commented on it, so I guess it's not really a big deal. Of course, now you're never gonna unsee it, so, whatever. You might be noticing that all these bugs are theater-related, by the way. We've pretty much wrangled all the bugs outside of theater, so theater remains the most problematic part of Halo 5 machinima mating. It's got all these stupid fucking quirks that I just can't figure out why they happen, when they're gonna happen, and how to fix them. Knowing that, and seeing that Infinite's theater is even more broken than 5's, I think I'm going to stop using theater altogether. And I honestly think the productions will be better off for it. I utilize machinima mode a lot more than I did for Brotherhood War, using it for all dialogue scenes and even some of the action scenes near the end. I found that I was much happier with my camera work with machinima mode and how much control I had over each shot compared to theater. Also, my shaky cam is definitely something I need to work on as well. I plan on toning it down in the future. There were times where I would be editing Hyborean late at night, and there's so much shaky cam while reviewing footage that I was literally getting motion sickness, so I'm sure that's negatively affecting the viewing experience. I'll rein it in the future. Using machinima mode should help with that. Aftermath was my first non-theater production, but Odd Men Out will be my first full-scale project that I will not use theater for. We'll see how it goes, but honestly, I think it'll go really well. One last thing I want to talk about is the Pelican and Phantom prefabs. So, for those who don't know, those aren't actual vehicles per se. They're static models and effects welded to an invisible banshee to create the illusion of flyable pelicans and phantoms. These motherfuckers were temperamental! The game simulates the weight of the objects, which is really cool, but it also made the poor banshee pilots struggle to keep the prefab steady. Because they outweight the banshee so much, they're prone to tilting and whipping around and dragging at the slightest adjustment. Not only that, but they are unstable as hell and tend to spaz out while shooting scenes. Sometimes the effects would straight up just disappear too, and randomly the scorpions they are carrying would just self-destruct, forcing a restart of the round. The part where the air convoy is flying to Seattle was easily one of the most excruciating and lengthy scenes to film. We could barely keep one prefab steady, let alone 5. Add in the wasps, which like to slide around by themselves a bit like they're on ice or grease or something, and they're easy to bump into each other, and we had an absolute bastard of a time creating a semi-logical looking air cav. We're lucky we got as much usable footage as we did. War Dog, Knight's friend who also did some forging for prefabs, that's his main skill is prefabs. He attempted to create more accurate looking pelicans for the first battles of Part 5, but we encountered issues with those right off the bat. Believe it or not, they were even more unstable than the normal ones. There were 3 of them, intended for use in the first industrial area. They worked fine in Forge mode when we first put them on the map, but then for whatever reason, when we went back to start shooting the scenes, sometimes they'd all be linked together. And you'd only be able to fly the 3rd one, and the other 2 would just stay locked to that one. And sometimes they just explode. Upon starting a game, all their pieces would just disconnect and fly apart with the force of a bomb. So we never got to use those nice ones. We had to use the ones we've been using the whole time, which I guess helped with continuity, but still War Dog put in all that effort and we didn't even get to touch the fucking things. While I think I managed to do the Pelican scene some good, overall they were kind of a hell to make. Thankfully, I have no plans to use these again, and I am perfectly happy with that. So, I might be getting a little long in the tooth for this machinima stuff, but I feel like right now, I am easily the best I've ever been, and I don't think anybody would dispute that. My experience has really added up. And like Brotherhood War, Hyborean took me leaps and bounds ahead in terms of post-production. I continued my practice of chroma keying that I began in Aftermath. I think that Guardian's holograms turned out really well. They're really simple, just a lot of effect layering and premeditated camera work. Chroma keying is also how I achieved this shot of Zack on the tram. The tram isn't actually moving, of course, it was surrounded by a green screen. I keyed out the green and overlaid it over a shot of the camera moving down the tunnel. I think it looks pretty good, except for this little part right here, where part of the tram turned transparent. I couldn't figure out a way to fix it, but I also don't think it's very noticeable. Oh well. I did a lot more color grading than I did in Aftermath. I'm starting to be a really big fan of color grading, actually. I've found that it can enhance the look of a scene quite a bit, setting the mood or making the colors less bland or more bland when needed. I think I did the most of it in parts 2 and 5. For some reason, the lighting on the Alpine canvas can look really, really bland, so I messed around with that a lot. And in part 5, I gave a slight orange tint to many of the nighttime scenes to enhance the feel that the city was on fire due to the attack, and also to de-bland the heavy amounts of gray. Hopefully none of it was too drastic, but I think I balanced it really well. Night Adventure also pushed me to create my first blended camera shot. If you look really closely at this shot of the Citadel, you'll notice there's more than 16 players present at the same time. This was done by merging 2 camera shots together. The in-game camera had to be perfectly centered and stationary to achieve this, and so I would shoot about a minute of screen time with everybody on one side, and then I would tell them to go to the other side into positions that they had already been informed of before we started. And then I took those and overlaid them on each other and cropped one of them down about halfway. So everything lines up perfectly, and the push-in was done through Premiere itself, not actual camera movement. It's a simple trick, but I think it looks really good, and is good practice for more advancements in the future. Only regret here, you wouldn't notice it right off the bat because I had to get such a wide shot, and all the Spartans are so small, but, you know, it's something. It's a big something. When it came to audio leveling, I made even more of an effort to make sure it was perfectly balanced, as all things should be. I continued to use my directional voice audio technique I developed for Brotherhood War because that was received really well. I made more usage of reverbs in more environment to help with immersion. I also experimented with more voice effects. You might have noticed that the Lifebringer's voice effect changed again. I thought the new effect was a lot better than the previous ones. The Centurions and Oversight also had a lot of work done to them too. Tatsumari applied certain effects to the files he sent me, and then I layered more over them to create what you hear in the final production. Oversight is probably my favorite. I was going for major Combine Overwatch vibes from Half-Life 2, and I think I recreated it almost perfectly. Guardian Centurion voice effect stuck with me so well that I let him keep it even after he lost his body. I think it sounds a lot better than his old Echo. The Flanger is a Premiere effect, so hopefully I'll be able to recreate it when I switch to Final Cut or something similar. One new technique I developed is something I call combat dialogue. I wanted to make these big, almost free-form battles the Spartan Legacy has been known for feel more immersive, more alive, with more dialogue so they look less like video game characters shooting at each other and more like 2 real enemy factions fighting each other. But because of the unpredictable nature of these battles and how they unfold as we film them, It'd be really unwieldy to try to script dialogue for every single one, so instead, I took yet another page out of Halo's book. I wrote down some pretty long lists of lines for the voice actors of Phoenix Team, the Centurions, and the Spartans to perform, and I got multiple takes of each line. These lines allow me to insert responses to potentially many different things happening to these characters when in battle, such as when they see an enemy, when they start or stop firing, when they're changing position, reloading, getting hurt, stuff like that. It's kind of like non-scripted AI dialogue in the Halo campaigns. I actually went for that feel of these characters responding dynamically to each other in battle, not just supporting each other, but commenting on the enemy and the situation. I feel like this not only made the battles more entertaining and organic, but also let the Spartan legacy even more of that authenticity people know it for. My only mistake? Not having enough lines. Seriously, I feel like I didn't write enough and I had to reuse some too many times. I'll know to write more in the future. Each character's combat dialogue is unique to them too. They all get different lines based on who they are, different ways to say the same thing. Zack's are quick and to the point, Denver's are loud and aggressive, Guardian's are a little more flippant and sometimes even casual, and Logan's are precise and commanding. I love doing that little growl he gets in his voice during combat lines, Phoenix Team, move up! The Centurions take inspiration from battle droids, not the oafish ones from Revenge of the Sith or Clone Wars with the stupid voices, but more the ones that are actually kind of intimidating, like from the Phantom Menace and Republic Commando. The Heavies, too, take inspiration from Republic Commando's super battle droids. They're more menacing and aggressive than the standard ones. And there are 3 versions of Spartans, one by Andrew Hindle, one by Tatsumari, and one by Sankei. They all share the same dialogue, but the variation in voices ensures they won't get stale. Their voice filters and some of their dialogue obviously are inspired by the Combine soldiers from Half-Life 2. Also, I'll be uploading a few videos showcasing the combat dialogue. Make sure to check those out when they come around. As the conclusion to the Lifebringer saga, Hyborean sees the end of a lot of different character arcs. I would like to start by talking about Logan. I knew that when I brought him back to Brotherhood War, he was gonna die. I think that Logan was the kind of man who devoted so much of his life to fighting that he wouldn't be able to keep from getting pulled back into it. It was only a matter of time before it claimed his life. And Logan got 70 good years before it did. He was a soldier through and through. In the end, he got to squeeze a bit of growth in, learning that his preconceptions about the Reformists weren't entirely factual, and coming around to them in the end. Wonder what would have happened if he'd lived to see the UCA come about. But of course, he didn't live. I felt really sad doing his final lines. Logan's a character I'd done for a long time now. It was hard to kill him. But I knew that doing so would further Zack's development and bring about a logical conclusion for Logan. So it serves a purpose, it isn't just a kill for shock value. His death scene is one of my favorites I've done so far. I'm quite proud of his and Zack's exchange as the last life leaves his body and he's struggling to hang on a little longer so he can have some final words with the man who's basically his protege. I'm quite proud of my voice acting during this part. I think I did a really good job. Logan's voice is, I think, the most distinct voice I've done, the one that sounds the least like my normal self, not just because it's altered to be deeper, but also the tone, the inflections. It's very consistent across all of Logan's appearances and distinct from other characters like Guardian or Joey or even Commander Gray. I'm gonna miss the guy. So this leads me into Galloway. I'm gonna be fully transparent here. Galloway serving the Lifebringer willingly was not planned during Brotherhood War and Aftermath. It was something I came up while planning out Hyborean, and I did it so I could have someone to hate for killing Logan. That's probably why I had to rewrite the scene so much. I knew the implementation would be clumsy. It was just a matter of making it the least amount of clumsy possible, and my first attempt at that huge info dump I mentioned was definitely very clumsy. But the final version I settled on was pretty damn good. And it also had an unintended benefit, the parallel of Galloway with Garrett. 2 Spartans who worked to tear down the UNSC and both succeeded, but with different intentions and results. Garrett did what he did, but he did it for the people. He never abandoned his dedication to humanity. Galloway, though, was just a straight-up traitor. He abandoned everybody for the Lifebringer. So honestly, I don't think it ended up being bad. I actually think I managed to do it justice. So that's a win for me. Props to Master Lyons for voicing Galloway across Brotherhood War and Hyborean. He was always enthusiastic and really enjoyed playing the character, and he played such a good liar. During the Part 4 premiere, he really had several people fooled that Galloway was just tired. trying to deal with what happened right up until the shoe drops. And then everyone was blown away by his complete change in tone. It was awesome. Can't wait to see what he can do in the future. And then there's the Lifebringer herself. Let me tell you, Alyssa was not happy she lost. But evil always engineers its own destruction eventually, and the Lifebringer, despite all her scheming and victories, was no exception. I personally thought that, as the titular character for Hyborean, her having parallels with both Zack and Asaka was quite well done. This personal vendetta she has against Zack was a lot of fun to explore. Despite all of her power and bluster, she fears him and says as much. Perhaps her plan to kill him was a little overcomplicated, but if that's the case, it's because she's being super cautious and doing everything she can to 100% sure she's gonna win. And it totally would have worked. Zack should have died right there. But she overlooked Silva. Now, she was trying to build up a force to deal with a greater threat, which sounds like a noble thing, but the way she went about it ended horribly for her due to a number of factors. There was her hubris. Her statue as the last Forerunner went to her head. I mean, that was always her problem, wasn't it? She always had to take matters into her own hands and do things her way and fuck anyone who got in the way. That's what got her imprisoned originally, and that's what got her all alone in the end with no one to help her. She turned on all her allies. Man, maybe she would have won if she had the Reformists to help her. Actually, I think I know she would have. But no. She was so damn self-focused and thought she stood miles above everybody because she had to have some sort of moral high ground to protect the galaxy and couldn't entrust the lesser races to help. She was a narcissist. Textbook narcissist through and through. She thought she was the only one who could save everybody, and she was so much better than all the humans and everybody, so she died alone, as evil always does, and no one's gonna miss her. Except maybe Alyssa, I guess. So after the Part 4 premiere, I was in a chat room with Ren, Obi, Winters, Tatsu, Logan, and a couple of the other guys, and we were talking about the scene where the Lifebringer is talking to those Vindicators, and the question came up, what are they saying to her? What could the Hyboreans have to say to their creator in this little intimate moment? Is there anything left of the Forerunners they once were? Is it like with the Spartans where there's a small part of them resisting? But the Spartans have been under control for less than a year, and the Hyboreans have been like that for hundreds of thousands of years. That is some fucking torment, man. Or are they so far gone that there's nothing left? Or is it absolutely nothing? That the Lifebringer is so far gone and so self-absorbed she's thinking she's having a conversation with her children, but really she's just kind of talking to herself. Or maybe their programming goes so deep that they are entirely dedicated to her. The thing is, I really don't know. It's ambiguous. It was such a cool conversation to have because of that.
You know, I almost didn't kill her. For a long time, the original plan was to have Zack defeat her and then spare her something to do with his arc about not wanting to be a killer anymore. Now he was tired of killing people, and he felt like killing her wouldn't have served any bigger purpose, and it would have just done as well to imprison her for all of her crimes and make her live with it for the rest of her days, or something like that. But as I was writing the script, I came down to the end and realized that it just wouldn't work at all, because she did so many horrible things, you know, committed so many atrocities and did so much damage. She had to be put down. That was the only fitting fate in the end. It had to be. I wanted to do something different than the others, but in the end, you know what? She fucking deserved it. And let's face it, that final attack that Zack does to her it's pretty goddamn satisfying to see. The Lifebringer is the complete antithesis of Zack. Zack is also imbued with a sense of purpose, but his arc has taken that purpose from trying to kill as much as he can until he dies to protecting his friends, his family, his home, and his people. Zack is strong, fast, smart, experienced, but he'd have died a long time ago without all these people supporting him. And he did almost die in the same room as the Lifebringer. Except the people he had built strong relationships were there for him. They saved him in the end. And he got exactly what he wanted. He got out of the military to live a peaceful life with the person he loves most, making the world a better place without having to kill people anymore. He embraced the challenge of being a leader, and he did his best, and despite everything that happened, he delivered humanity from the Lifebringer. I don't think Zack is the kind of guy to like the taste of being in command, though. He's always left that to others when he could. I don't think he liked it very much. But as a counselor in the UCA, that's where you can still do some good without having to take or spend lives. You know, I gotta say, after killing so many characters over the course of my productions, it was really nice to give one a happy ending. And Zach, out of anybody, Zach deserved it. He's been through so much conflict and strife and always worked hard and came out the other side a better man. Both he and Garrett 100% deserve their retirement. Riley did such a good job encapsulating Zach's character from day one. He's been through Zach's journey right alongside me. It was often good counsel when writing or editing new dialogue and giving suggestions on line direction. He knows Zach so well. Probably better than I do, almost. Also, that speech near the end of part 4, Riley started by doing several takes of individual parts of the speech, and then he goes, "Hey Jake, let me see if I can do it all in one go," and then he did, and it was awesome. And that's the take I used in the final product, all in one go. I hadn't originally planned on the relationship conflict between Zach and Teresa, but while sketching out Hyborean story beats, I realized, hey, this is a guy who has lived for 60 years without knowing anything about romantic relationships, and a girl who is experiencing massive confidence issues and the need to overcompensate. There's no fucking way this relationship would be going smoothly. After being married for so long now, I realized that getting into the relationship is only half the battle. It doesn't just end there. Maintaining it, making sure that you're a good enough person for your partner through and through, learning how to treat them and live with them, that's a whole nother fight. Writing this story thread allowed me to take their arcs just a little bit further. Their argument isn't some big make or break thing, it's just a little spat as they figure each other out. Denver letting go of her insecurity is one of my favorite arcs. I like it, it's tight. I will say though, on the subject of Denver, if I have one major regret about Hyborean, I realized after finishing everything that I felt I had kind of stiffed Denver accidentally. I might have bit off more than I can chew with this one character-wise. There is so much going on for everybody in Hyborean that I forgot to give her more time to shine. All the moments she gets to herself involve her getting hurt or something, or are dependent on another character, and I forgot to let her stand out from Phoenix Team more. Sometimes I worry that I attempted to do a little more than I could with the story, tried to do too much, and Denver getting shafted is evidence of this. I wish I'd given her a chance to save the day, instead of just Zach or Guardian doing it like they always do all the time. I should have balanced it better. It's my mistake, and I'll learn from it. Feather always did an excellent job, though. She always gave 110%, and everybody knows it. Everybody commented on how much of a good job she did. I have never doubted that she was the right choice to take over Denver after Lifebringer. You know, it's really cool how she and Riley have never been in the same room together and met like once, and yet managed to have such good chemistry together. Don't get me wrong, I like where Denver's story went. She managed to find herself in a world where Spartans reign supreme, and she's surrounded by people who are physically stronger and faster than her. I think she ended up in a good place. Between her and Zach, she was definitely the right choice to remain in the military. I think she's much more comfortable with that. I just wish I'd given her some more awesome moments that didn't rely on other characters to work. I am also happy with where Garrett and Nyla ended up. Particularly Nyla. She had good intentions, but was just very, very misguided. And that's not something you can't come back from. She was doing things all the wrong way, like the Lifebringer, but unlike the Lifebringer, she learned what she was doing was wrong. She saw that she was demonizing the people of the UNSC, and violence was just going to make things worse. And that with people like Zach and Logan, there really was the potential for change. Shoving her aside and not letting her have any say for her people's future would have undercut both her arc as well as Zach's, and the whole storyline of the UNSC and the Reformation coming together to an understanding, and making things better for everybody in all of the colonies. So now she's got a seat on the UCA Council, she's still kept in check a little bit. It's not as if she has free reign to do whatever she wants. Nobody can quite trust her for that amount of power just yet, but she can actively work towards a better future for the outer colonies now, which is all she ever wanted to do to begin with. I feel like people sleep on Ashley's voice acting. I found her portrayal of Isaka to be one of my favorites in the entire Lifebringer saga. She nailed the character from start to finish. I feel like Garrett has pretty much completed his arc by the time of Hyborean, save for when he and Logan wrap things up between each other, but we did get to see that interesting comparison to Galloway. I liked how that turned out.
Props to Mega for not only voicing Garrett, but all his writing help for Brotherhood War and Hyborean. It wouldn't have been anywhere near as good without him. And hey, let's not forget the supporting cast. Judge Red got a lot of praise for his role as Sergeant McGarry. He really sells the role of a grizzled ODST veteran. I thought his sudden, quick death was a good representation of the direness of the Resistance attack on Seattle. Owens, too, I thought was really good. Sankey did quite well at playing the guy you're not quite sure about at first, but then you realize he's with you till he dies. Which he did, sadly. Also, 49er and Albrecht returned from the Zulu flight short. I'm glad Winters got to create this duo because they were great to have in Hyborean. Winters was not happy that I killed them. But, you know, things have to be done. To me, they represent the common guy among all these heroes, a Marine and a Reformist banding together to take back their lives. You can also tell 49er is loosened up a bit, probably because Albrecht got him to do so. Their deaths were hard to do, but I felt like they were necessary to sell the stakes of the battle. Seeing the little guys get killed sometimes has even more of an impact than losing a major character. I salute their bravery and valor in a time where their enemies are so much bigger than they are. In case you didn't know, Hyborean is the last chapter of the Lifebringer saga, but it is also the penultimate chapter in the overall Spartan legacy. We still have some adventures left with Guardian, Scott, Hadley, Chen, and especially Silva. Just as the torch was passed from Saul to Catherine and Catherine to Zack, Zack has now passed it to Silva. Silva's come a long way, hasn't she? The moment where she wrestles control away from the Lifebringer, albeit temporarily, is quite possibly my favorite moment in all of Hyborean. And Hyborean has a lot of good moments. She may not be as strong as Chen, or as skilled a shot as Hadley, or as comfortable a leader as Scott, but her strongest trait is her individuality. Her ability to think for herself and question what is going on. This is something Zack lacked in Brotherhood War, and it's what allowed Silva to break through the Lifebringer's control, even if it was just for a few minutes. The Lifebringer's control perverted the Spartans' personalities. Chen's bravado and courage turned to bloodlust and rage. Hadley's humor completely went away, leaving only a cold killer, and Scott's stoic leadership became a cruel dictatorship. But even though Silva became the Lifebringer's assassin, her ability to think for herself could not be stripped away. This trait will take her far in the times to come. She just has to find the confidence to support it, and settle in her role as Corsair's new leader, and she could be a legend right along with the others. I'm very excited to tell her story. Catastrophe continues to deliver her amazing portrayal of Silva. I mean, guys, how fucking good was that "I will be free" line? Seriously! And she's so excited for what's coming in the future. I've been able to share with her a little bit of it. Even though the Void is many, many years away, I feel confident that Kat will eagerly return for it. I can't express how lucky I feel to have her aboard. But nobody has more fun than Nyoka. And I haven't ever had so much fun working with a voice actor either. Just listening to her giggle her way through Chen's lines was a highlight of Hyborean's production. It's infectious. And oh man, did she take the evil Chen. Or Gremlin Chen, as the community keeps calling her. The evil laughing and the bloodlust would be so hard for many actors to pull off without sounding stupid, but god damn did she nail it. Everyone I have shown Hyborean to has something good to say about evil Chen. Still, it's nice to see Chen get back to her former self, but then we see her at a low point we've never seen before, wounded and lashing out because of it. I think she's having a hard time dealing with it, because the first thing she does after coming back is not to cope with her own actions, but to rush to Hadley's aid. Her confidence has been shaken, but I think she'll be okay given time. The same cannot be said for Hadley. That cockiness he had, that confidence and smugness and self-assurance, learning that his creation as a Spartan was a lie and the loss of his free will pretty much shattered his worldview and shook him to the core. He might have gotten his free will back, but he took what he did as a Lifebringer slave a lot harder than the others. I feel like maybe he had a bit of a privileged life before, and while it's not like he has never been exposed to violence and harsh truths and things like that, I think he lacked empathy and thought he was better than all these people, only to be brought so much lower than them. He became a murderer. The organization that he joined up with of his own free will, that he trusted and felt so much better because he was a part of it, turned him into a murderer. A monster, like he says. He'll never come back from that. He'll never be the same Hadley we knew from Brotherhood War. But maybe in the end, he'll be better off for it, if he can grow past it. Either way, going forward, Hadley will be a lot different, maybe a bit darker, and I plan on exploring that.
Laughing Block was rather busy during Hyborean's production, so I had to cut down Hadley's lines a bit, but when he does speak, you can tell he's absolutely there for it. He killed Hadley's breakdown in Part 4. I don't think anybody could have done that better. Now, in a matter of experience, I don't think anyone has come further than Scott. He's gone from a Marine to an ODST to a Spartan Fire Team leader and now to leader of all the Spartan 5s and commander of the Infinity. It's a lot of responsibility, but if anyone can do it, it'll be Scott. You know what I like about Scott? When he sees his team is struggling, he's right there to help prop them back up instead of focusing on himself. That's what makes him a good leader. The Lifebringer doesn't get that. She thought that by removing the things that made them good, they'd be more efficient, better soldiers, but she doesn't understand. It's their humanity that makes them strong. And the first thing he does when he comes back from the Lifebringer's control is to apologize for actions that weren't even his own. That says a lot about his character. Tristan's come a long way too. He started as a body actor, then became a voice actor, and then his character became a fan favorite, and now he's a moderator on my server and one of my most trusted friends. He helps me out with a whole lot of stuff, mostly logistics, organization. He also properly formatted the Spartan Field Guide and the Hyborean Visual Guide so that they export to PDF properly. This is all stuff that's been a huge help to me. I'm really glad to have him along, man. I am really excited to tell the story of the Void. Right now, it's only a loose collection of ideas, and what I can end up doing with it will depend on what Infinite will let me do, because I do intend to make it an Infinite. I already have a lot of good ideas that I think I can do, but I do know it's going to be a hell of an adventure, with Scott, Silva, Chen, Hadley, Guardian, and the Infinity. It's going to wrap up the Spartan legacy, and it'll be the biggest adventure yet. It's also probably around 5 or 6 years away. Infinite still needs a lot of room to grow, and I need a break from all these fucking huge war machinimas, dude. Next up is Odd Men Out Season 3. But don't worry, the Void is always in the back of my mind. For now, thank you for watching Hyborean. It was such a success, and I'm so proud of it and everyone who worked on it. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I can't express to you how grateful I am for your support. Remember, you make stuff like Hyborean happen. Here's to many more years of storytelling, and I'm really excited to have you guys alongside me for it.